YouTube family, welcome to the show. Make sure to smash like and subscribe as we psychoanalyze Thomas Tuchel. Vamos! It's too easy to put us off balance, to confuse, to beat us, to push us off track. It's too easy. Those were the words of Thomas Tuchel following yesterday's defeat at Southampton. Chelsea's manager is cutting an increasingly frustrated figure these days as the once most miserly defense in the Premier League is now leaking goals at an alarming rate, while struggling to score at the other end. So how has the season started so poorly for the Blues? I'm joined by Jonathan Johnson to discuss that very question, as well as the latest drama from the soon-to-close transfer market. Qué Golazo begins right now. Hey, everybody, welcome to Qué Golazo. Thank you so much for being part of the family. YouTube.com/Qué Golazo pod on Twitter. Thank you so much for being part of our QG fam. Plenty more to come, including our weekend preview. And tomorrow we'll have a great live recap right after the transfer window shuts. So make sure to stay tuned. And later on as well, we'll have much more, including transfer informations and Champions League next week. Jonathan Johnson, good to have you on the show. How are you, brother?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks, my friend. And yourself?
I'm good. I'm so happy when it's just you and me and we psychoanalyze not only Thomas Tuchel, but the descending stories from other clubs who we will not mention. Don't worry, we'll talk about that later. But JJ, great to have you. Make sure to follow all his content, John_Le Gossip. He's been all over the news this summer as well. CBS Sports website. JJ, today's topic, today's headline, today's main dish in the menu is Chelsea. And Thomas Tuchel, after losing 3-0 to Leeds United, you would think that midweek, this very strong side, this very recent Champions League champion would kind of wake up. But no, it wasn't to be. After taking a 1-0 lead against Southampton, they end up losing 2-1 and cramming, key injuries as well. Reece James, Kante, Loftus-Cheek. It's not pretty, my friend. Straight away, I'm just going to ask you, is Thomas Tuchel on the hot seat?
It's not pretty, but you know what is pretty? That New Mexico shirt that you're wearing. I like it. It's almost kind of got like a knitwear vibe to it.
It's beautiful, man. Shout out to Adidas for the shout out. But thank you for noticing.
No, I mean, honestly, when you said it was dish of the day, it's kind of got a familiar flavor to it because I've seen Thomas Tuchel go through this kind of thing before with PSG, and we know that ultimately it probably doesn't end well. Whether he can find like a second win with Chelsea, we'll have to wait and see. Is he under pressure? I think he is. I think he's feeling the pressure. But I think there's kind of a lot of different mitigating circumstances around it as well. I mean, obviously you had the change in ownership, which really changes the dynamic, for Chelsea, whether people want to admit it or not. It's not like Tuchel starting from scratch, but, it's sort of resetting the credit counter to zero. And, you mentioned a couple of key absences as well, Reece James, notably, N'Golo Kanté. I mean, Kanté is now, a worry for club and country. How much more juice is there left in the tank? Because it doesn't seem like there is that much left at this moment in time. I think Chelsea as well. I mean, they're welcoming new players in through the door all the time. It's going to take a while before Tuchel is settled on his best 11. There's a lot of disgruntled players in that group as well. I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to discuss Christian Pulisic later, but he's not the only one who doesn't necessarily see himself being a proper fit under Tuchel. And I think Tuchel kind of needs now the best part of a year, 18 months to properly, sink his teeth into this squad, especially with, other players being linked with the club as well. Gvardiol, who might potentially come into the mix next season or something like that. So, it seems like there's stuff changing all the time. And honestly, it kind of feels like Tuchel has kind of been a bit spoiled by the situation since the takeover got ratified. It's almost gone from like, right, there's absolutely nothing you can do to change this team. The club is under embargo. You just have to deal with what you've got, which is when I believe Tuchel is at his best as a manager. And now sort of basically being able to, make any sort of, quick demands, to the leadership. And, they sort of, cater to every whim, and are strengthening in a bunch of different positions over the pitch. So to me, it kind of seems like there's the sort of vision under Tuchel right now is a bit blurry.
It's blurry, and it's been a tough one for Thomas Tuchel. We have to remember that during the Abramovich drama situation, it was him that had to be basically the press conference officer regarding what was going on with the latest ins and outs. So I do feel for him. And to your point, he's been through this before in previous situations. I think that what's a little bit worrying is the thing that you said the most here, JJ, which is we have a new owner now. Chelsea has a new owner in Todd Bowley. And Todd Bowley is not, I think, going to put up with any kind of, subpar performances, specifically when he's looking to add a tremendous amount of intel. You mentioned the transfers. This is what Thomas Tuchel said. What will help is the closing of the transfer window. We will know who has full commitment, who needs to commit to what we demand. Then everybody, including myself, needs to step up to a new level of performance. It's nice that he's taking a little bit of responsibility here, but it's a little weird, JJ, that he's saying that he needs to wait for the transfer window to shut to know who's committed. If you're a Chelsea player at this moment, you're a Chelsea player, whether you want to leave or go. It's kind of weird to me that this very smart, very work ethic demanding German manager is trying to wait for the end of the transfer window to see what player really wants to stick around. And that's kind of weird. Just a reminder, the ins, Raheem Sterling, Kukureya, Koulibaly, Gallagher coming back from loan, of course, Broja as well, and the outs, Rudiger, Werner, Lukaku, Christensen, Emerson. And yes, Pulisic, to your point, JJ, is that a weird quote to you, or is it, just trying to calm down a few fires before the window shuts?
It isn't a weird quote. It is logical, but also at the same time, you're right. You shouldn't have to need a transfer window to close for players to be fully committed. Unfortunately, it just seems to be the nature of the modern game as it is at the moment. That a lot of players, sort of project themselves elsewhere. It struck me while I was looking at some of the deals being discussed just the other day, like some of the players moving on after such a short period of time at their new clubs, like Gozens, for example, Jeremy Boga, who I think had already been at their clubs for sort of 6 to 12 months. There is a lot of that around. And, you've got other players. Looking specifically within the Chelsea squad, you've got someone like Hakim Ziyech, someone whose move to Chelsea hasn't worked out, has now taken steps to try and secure himself and move away. That still hasn't happened. So perhaps it's those kind of players that Tuchel had in mind when he was saying that. But, I do think it must be really frustrating as a coach that basically your season starts from when players are locked into the squad. And if you're a club that's going to be aiming to go to the latter stages of the Champions League, that's not really sort of being locked in for sort of the next 5 months or so. That's being locked in until the end of the season, because a club like that is not really going to sanction any major departures mid-season. So it's basically knowing who will be there, for the duration of the campaign. So that suggests to me, when Tuchel's saying it, that there are a lot of players who are trying to force a way out, and maybe trying to do it in a subtle way or not be too obvious about it. But, these are the kind of things that you're going to pick up on, especially if you're a coach as close to the players as Tuchel is, likes to be very involved. He will know who is sort of agitating for a move elsewhere to better their game time, especially just months away from a World Cup. And perhaps that itself explains, part of what I was mentioning earlier about so many players moving on, even after a short space of time, having just signed for a new club 6 to 12 months ago.
Well, one of them is Christian Pulisic. And let's get to that point, because it's no secret that he really was hoping to leave at the very least on loan to get minutes ahead of a World Cup. Apparently, Todd Bowley from the beginning didn't want that to happen, specifically to a rival club, because there was interest from clubs such as Manchester United and possibly even Newcastle. But it seems to me, unless something happens in the last seconds, that somebody like Pulisic will stay. So, this being a USMNT centric audience as well, Jonathan Johnson, thoughts on Pulisic, being one of those players that perhaps Tuchel was talking about, whether he was committed or not. It's not like he's getting the minutes. What do you make of the American, possibly not even going anywhere at the end of this window?
I don't know if necessarily Tuchel's getting at him, because, at the end of the day, Pulisic will get some minutes. They just won't necessarily be key minutes, certainly not in comparison to what he might have been able to find if he'd been able to secure a move elsewhere. But, also at the same time, I take it back to the debate that we had recently. I think it was James Benge who was who brought up this point. And to be fair, it is quite a good point. Is the quality of minutes with Chelsea going to be higher than, the quantity of minutes that he could get elsewhere? Because it's difficult to find sort of a better quality club to be at, especially in the months leading up to a World Cup. And with all due respect, it's even higher quality than it would be at Manchester United, who aren't in the Champions League, unlike Chelsea. So perhaps Pulisic's minutes with Chelsea might ultimately stand him in better stead for the World Cup, because going anywhere else probably would have been a massive gamble. Even going back somewhere familiar like the Bundesliga, it would have had to have been a very, very good fit with a club. And I think there are a limited number of clubs in Germany that could even try to bring somebody like Pulisic in. And I don't think MLS probably would have even been an option for him in the run-up to the World Cup. So I think ultimately for Pulisic, it's probably going to be a question of just make do as best he can with the situation, because if he continues to feature, not starting that regularly, but if Chelsea continue to go deep in the cups, then he will get a run of minutes. But that will all depend on whether Chelsea's form picks up or not. So personally, I don't get the impression that Pulisic would be sort of, one of the main players sort of causing issues and headaches for Thomas Tuchel. But sure, I can understand that he wouldn't be happy with his lack of minutes, and that's why he would have preferred to be able to move on this summer.
Yeah, fair enough. And Pulisic maybe not saying much, but I'll tell you who is talking, and he's been very public about it, and that's his father, Mark Pulisic, live tweeting, criticizing Tuchel, of course. Thomas Tuchel responding, "I'm not concerned if a father says that a player does not love me." I love that. I want that on a t-shirt, by the way. So it's going to be interesting. Listen, my own take about this is, if I'm Christian Pulisic right now, I'm taking the gamble. I just want minutes. I don't care whether it's, Dagenham and Redbridge, or if it's Manchester City. It's like he just wants to play, and unfortunately right now that's not happening. So I think in terms of like quality over minutes, it's going to be the biggest argument, but we're going to have to wait and see. By the way, as the transfer window is shutting, not long to go now, we also have Wesley Fofana getting closer to being announced by Chelsea. That'll be a huge addition at the back.
He's been announced. I think the official announcement came.
And that's a great acquisition for Chelsea at the back, definitely. And Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, obviously, the most important thing going on right now is him being safe and his family safe. He suffered a broken jaw, apparently, due to this armed robbery. We wish him all the best, and I can't even begin to imagine not just the physical issues that he dealt with, but the psychological ones. So I'm sure that maybe that is weighing on his mind. So Chelsea still have a lot of business to do. And there is Wesley Fofana right there. He wanted this move. The move happened, of course. But do you think now then that, let's say for the sake of argument, JJ, Aubameyang joins Chelsea, Fofana is in now. Is there anything else? Do you think that no more excuses for Tuchel? Do you think they probably need one or two more players?
There's no such thing in the Thomas Tuchel playbook as no more excuses. There's always an endless supply of excuses, and people will find that if they don't know that already, they're going to find that out pretty soon. It really depends on how much input Tuchel has had into the transfers, because I know that he knows players like Aubameyang from the past, but Aubameyang, when Tuchel was his coach at Dortmund, is very different to the Aubameyang that we know now, who's retired from international duty, had sort of found like a new lease of life with Barca, and then, suddenly is no longer needed by them already. Another one of those players who's been there, for just a short period of time and finds himself on the move again. So for me, I don't think that, Tuchel will sort of view this situation as no more excuses. But I do think that, he can't really complain too much about the squad that's been put in front of him.
Let me just support that part, JJ. Let me just support your argument there, because Chelsea are closing in on a whopping £300 million transfer window right now. Raheem Sterling, Koulibaly, Carney Chukwuemeka, Cucurella, Slonina, Wesley Fofana, and if they get Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, that increases.
Gvardiol's another 90 million, so that'd be nearly 400 for okay, he might not arrive and be a player at least for another 12 to 18 months, but still another player, isn't
right? Exactly right. So let me ask you this right now, the way that it's going, and let's wrap up the Chelsea chatter, because we do have a few other pieces of information to go through. Is it now, because I can't remember what I said in my predictions before the season started, but I did have Chelsea out of the top four. And I think that my argument for that one is strengthening minute by minute, regardless of the money that they're spending. What say you?
Yeah, I don't disagree. It wouldn't surprise me to see Chelsea drop out of the top four. And like I said, I expect there to be plenty more excuses coming from Thomas Tuchel over the next few weeks. Because really, at the end of the day, when you've got a newly assembled squad, which this essentially now is, it's going to take time, for that chemistry to redevelop. I mean, you look at the way that defense was just dismantled, from the one that Tuchel was able to call upon last season. Some guys are there who, have wanted out, Marcos Alonso, I think, has had personal terms agreed with Barca since like April or something like that, and he's still there. Azpilicueta wanted a Barca move as well. I know that there's probably less criticism of Azpilicueta because he is a pro's pro, and at the end of the day, will honor his commitment to Chelsea. But you look at Thiago Silva's not getting any younger. He's not quite out of the picture, but also is going to be an increasingly rare sort of key piece for Chelsea to be able to call upon. A new defense takes time to gel, takes time to be as solid as the one that helped them win the Champions League very early in Thomas Tuchel's tenure. I mean, that also is part of the problem as well. Tuchel set the bar so high in those opening 6 months at Stamford Bridge. It's very difficult to live up to that, afterwards. So, I mean, for me, yep, I think the pressure is definitely on Tuchel. I can see Chelsea finishing outside of the top four. And if they are on course to finish outside of the top four, I don't think it'll be Tuchel who finishes the season in the Chelsea hot seat.
Yeah, interesting. Speaking of hot seats, we've already had one victim, Scott Parker, being let go by Bournemouth. I mean, listen, it was, I think Bournemouth in this situation cold as cards, because Scott Parker publicly has been saying, I need a better squad, I need back me or sack me, and I think they did the latter. So Scott Parker is done. Quick thoughts on Parker leaving, and dare I ask JJ, who's next?
You know what? I'm not surprised, given sort of Parker's kind of loserish mentality after that defeat against Liverpool. I mean, there are ways to take a defeat on your chin. His sort of discourse after that loss was definitely not one of them. And I can understand he was wanting to prove a point to the board. I don't think it strengthened his position, winning on opening day against Villa, especially a Villa team that has spent so much to improve and has seemingly gone backwards. Whether or not Gerrard sort of follows on his heels, we'll have to wait and see. There are a number of other candidates who could follow him, but Tuchel, I think is definitely one of them. And I think as well, you've got to look at somebody like Frank Lampard as well. And I know there's quite a rich sort of Chelsea and ex-England international kind of vibe to that, but it's just the way that the season has started at the moment. But for Parker, I think he did a good job getting Bournemouth, back into the Premier League. But I think, I can see his point why he was so frustrated with the board, especially when you bear in mind some of the sums of money that they've seen players leave for, and then, not being able to replace them, and then to come up to the Premier League and essentially sort of act on, with like a shoestring budget. I think, seeing guys like Gary Cahill leave, ripping some of the experience out of that team, it's, I can understand that, he was wanting to, basically put the Bournemouth board in a position where they had to decide between financial stability or not risking their long-term future and actually giving him a chance to keep Bournemouth up, because aside from that Villa win, Bournemouth have looked well.
I was going to say, I'm kind of on the fence on this one. I think, to your point, there's a little bit of a defeatist situation with Scott Parker towards the end. Obviously, losing 9-0 against Liverpool is going to make anybody feel defeatist, and beating Villa and the opening day of the season 2-0 at Vitality Stadium is not, to your point, the way that Villa are playing right now, it's not exactly a huge successive story, but it is a win for a newly promoted club, and well done. It's just that after that, they lose 4-0 to Manchester City, they lose 3-0 to Arsenal, then 9-0 to Liverpool. But I will say that how many more newly promoted teams can get anything out of those three opponents, at the beginning of the season? So I think that Parker maybe should have been giving a little bit more time, at least, to see what they can do against the likes of a Wolves, for example, who they're playing today as we tape, or after that, Nottingham Forest, Brighton, etc. So I do feel for him a little bit, but the moment he said back me or sack me, I think he put the ownerships of the board in the corner and he said, well, we'll do the latter. Speaking of other people, well, we'll just have to wait and see. You mentioned Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard. It's interesting how the early 2000s midfield of England is now suffering, the dreaded fate of maybe being fired. It makes us feel old, Jonathan Johnson. I'll tell you that much. But anyway, those are the stories from today. We have much more as we tape. By the way, there's still the matches to be played on the Wednesday in the Premier League and all over Europe, and the transfer window shuts as well tomorrow. By the way, we have a very quick, if this comes out before it, we have a very quick live episode with JJ and Fabrizio, and we also have our special recap tomorrow, including our weekend preview. Mike Lahoud is going to join us after the break. When we come back, it's all about transfer stories. We'll do a very quick take on the transfer stories that we want to see, that we expect to see before the window shuts. LME, Jonathan Johnson, Qué Golazo, Mike Lahoud coming later on. We're taking a break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. And look who it is. Are you inside a magician's?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Jeez, I feel like I've been stuck in freaking traffic inside my own mind waiting to get back on the show.
You look like you're trapped inside a photo booth now. You're like remaking the Colin Farrell film.
You know what? I'm getting my A license, UEFA A license, because Thomas Tuchel, if he loses another game, I'll be taking my badges and printing my photo. So you never know. Got to get ready. Chelsea,
Are you adept at playing a small violin though, in the way that Thomas Tuchel is?
I am adept at if Christian Pulisic's dad keeps liking tweets criticizing the manager, I can do the same. Be adept at that.
I'm just waiting for that Insta story.
But you know what? I meant to put this out to LME, and thanks to Mike mentioning it, I'm going to bring it up now. You've got a couple of examples of this. Like, I mean, look at something Villa specific where you've got Leon Bailey, his his advisor / stepdad, I think, coming out and sort of criticizing the situation at the moment. Like Mike is like an ex-pro. Have you ever seen something like that happening with a teammate? And sort of what impact does that have sort of within a squad, like on the way that some of his teammates will view a player like that when their parent is coming out? I mean, I feel like, Adrien Rabiot must have felt like this his entire career.
I can tell you those teammates that I heard after the fact because they were gone. Typically that doesn't end well for you when your parents, especially your parents, come on, this is professional sports, professional soccer. Your parents should not be intervening. And that's kind of passive aggressive in my mind. And I think Christian Pulisic is a great player. I think he will have a big say for this U.S. men's national team. And I know that you guys were talking about it earlier, but that's a distraction that can't be a part of this whole situation. If he's really unhappy at Chelsea, he needs to find a move and he needs to find it quick. If not now, then definitely in January. But he needs minutes, as you had said, JJ, and you just hate to see it come down to this. And point of contention, after the last match against Southampton, only Chelsea player to not go and salute the fans. Christian Pulisic, first one to walk off. So it's getting pretty dire for him.
It is. I hate it when parents or anybody gets him. And I'm South American. I know that if I was a professional player, mi tia would be right at it if I wasn't being selected. But I absolutely detest it. Like you said, Mike, I don't think it does anybody any good. If anything, it damages it even more. So please stop. And yes, Leon Bailey specifically, I just really hope that's right now. All right, we're going to talk about the latest transfer news as the window is shutting. Mike, I'm going to give you first thoughts on this, and then JJ, you jump in. But I want to kind of to begin on really interesting story, I guess. Lucas Ocampos was on his way to Ajax. He was done. He was on the flight. He's ready to go for a 20 million fee as well from Sevilla. And look what happened. Ajax board were like, actually, we don't like this. It's a little bit too pricey. All right. So the plane turns right around and leaves again. Mike, thoughts on this one? Interesting developments, as I thought Ocampos was on his way to Ajax to replace, of course, being part of the replacement of Anthony.
Well, wait. Let's add what followed after that into the story, because it wasn't just that he turned around and went back. Ajax then sent Huntelaar and Hamstra to Seville to apologize to him. So it's like adds like an extra layer to the comedy.
Oh man, I feel like this sums up. This has been one of the most bizarre transfer windows where you have so many potential moves, and to get moves like this where it's so close. where you're a player and you're on your way, it just dismays you, and it shows a player of Ocampos's quality. This is one of the players who was a key cog in Sevilla's wheel over the last couple seasons, a winger who can function as a second striker, who can function centrally. He gives a bit more in terms of versatility, I think, than Anthony does. Anthony's one heck of a player with a lot of promise, but if you're Ocampos, man, your head must be spinning thinking, I have to go back to that fire sale that is for Sevilla, the dumpster fire that's happening in Andalusia right now. Oh, man, he's not going to be welcomed back with the most open of arms, given how this has gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I feel like I'm really down on Sevilla every time they come up on the podcast at the moment. I've already said how I kind of feel like it's maybe not Monchi's finest moment, but I think that just reflects that there's not actually as much sort of value within the sort of band that Sevilla would normally try to target than anything else. But it does feel weird that they're sort of shedding so much talent. It's, Sevilla who have always been one of those teams nobody really wants to come up against domestically or continentally, because they're kind of like one of the best of the rest. And they obviously have that pedigree as well in the Europa League. But now to sort of see it all falling away in this manner, to me, it seemed like a really logical move, Ocampos going to Ajax, and it might still happen. It just sounds like it's more of a financial reservation than one actually about the ability of the player. He's added a lot more consistency to his game as well over the last couple of years, but very, very, weird and amusing episode. I mean, I hope it works out well for him.
I tell you who is loving this, whoever's collecting the flight minutes, flight points, because it's just going back and forth on this. I absolutely adore it. JJ, give us a lowdown quickly on PSG, because, I know there's always something going on. Hey, by the way, Neymar leading in assists and goal in Ligue 1. I love it. But is there a midfield revamp going on as well, even though despite the fact that Renato Sanchez is in there and Fabian Ruiz as well? What's going on with PSG before the end of the window?
Oh yeah, you look at the situation that PSG have been in over the last couple of years, and the midfield has essentially been Marco Verratti and like a random mix of other guys, but nobody else is sort of at the level of Verratti's brilliance. And I think one of the priorities when Luis Campos came in was like, right, we need to rebuild the midfield. So there is a solid unit around Verratti when he's fit and in form. And if he's not fit and in form, then his unavailability doesn't dictate PSG's ability to actually win games. And suddenly you've gone from PSG having a bunch of dead wood in the middle of the park to, guys like Paredes, Idrissa Gueye, Wijnaldum, being out the door. And PSG for less than 100 million euros, I think is their sort of net spend. They're bringing in guys like Renato Sanchez, Carlos Soler, Fabian Ruiz. It is a major revamp. Vitinha, I mean, he came in so early in the transfer window that people forget that he's actually a new signing as well. He was missed against Monaco over the weekend. I mean, it really is impressive the way that whole position has kind of just been rebuilt over the course of a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, it's at the very least very, if you're a PSG fan, at least you're beginning to see that sort of change of culture that they've been wanting to change for so long. And Galtier obviously remains the number one. Well, and of course, the board behind him as well. Hey, Michael Ahoud, let's talk about a storyline that you're looking at before the window shut. We can go anywhere. I mean, we can go to your Manchester United. We can go anywhere you want. Where are you looking at before this window shuts?
Oh, obviously Manchester United. So much business being done by the Red Devils, and with Anthony coming in, now it gives me a bit of hope. But as they say in American sports, it's the hope that kills you. I was talking with my friends on the train ride up to Austin, and I said to him, Corey, I think we have a Premier League team that can get top four. And he said, don't say it. Don't do it. The big thing is I want this Ronaldo saga to go away. If he's going to go. If he's not going to go, stay. I think he's going to end up staying. And there's going to be a lot of work he's going to have to do to endear himself back to the United staff, back to the fans, and back to his teammates. Yes, his best friend, Bruno Fernandes, will be his boy. That doesn't change. But will he garner the respect of this team that is now finding ways to win without him and function well without him? When I watched him play against Southampton, you could tell he didn't want to be there. He looked like a player who looked on his way out, who looked very much 37 years old, didn't look anything like the player from last year. There's a couple transition plays where some of the selfishness that typifies him as a striker, you saw where it was 3v1 counterattacks. And rather than playing the ball to the wide player who was isolated, he was playing the ball to the near side player so he can make the overlapping run. And I just have a bad feeling still about if he stays. I hope someone, whether it's Napoli, I hope someone can make a move. Spalletti already coming out and saying we want him. I just hope someone makes a move to get him at the 11th hour, because that would be good for both player and club. And last but not least, that back line, man, if we can get Serginho Dest, a player who has had success under Ten Hag with when he played at Ajax, we can get the likes of a Dest. That provides depth in the back line, especially at outside back with Dalot and even Malacia at left back. Dest can play on either side. And you know what that means? It makes me really tingle. It's why I got up at 6 a.m. To sit in traffic this morning, of course. Thank you to our tech guy at Austin FC. But why I got up was the thought of, wait a second, if those guys come in, then man, can Phil Jones actually leave? Can Phil Jones actually leave? I don't know. Call me crazy. Come on, Phil Jones. 11th year. Can we get you out of here?
But what if Phil Jones leaves and then turns into Chris Smalling, who's like morphed into like an elite defender since linking up with Mourinho in Rome?
JJ, I'll tell you what, there's more chance of me getting hired by Chelsea after I take my passport photo here in this booth that I'm sitting in right now than that happening.
Yeah, regarding Serginho Dest, by the way, Fabrizio Romano confirming that Ten Hag would like him, but Wan-Bissaka needs to go first, so there has to be a little bit there. And Villarreal are also interested in Dest as well. Jonathan Johnson, where else are you looking at, my friend?
Yeah, well, I actually believe that Ten Hag has come out and said that United's business is done. Whether that's just bluff or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it does sound like there's a few USMNT names who could be on the move. In the obvious ones, you've mentioned Dest and the Villarreal possibility as well. But then you've got Pepe, who's been on the move as well. I think he's joined Groningen, or he's about to join Groningen. I don't know if that one's actually been confirmed just yet, but could be a huge few months for some of these USMNT stars, because there's a very small window of time left to force their way into Berhalter's plans. I know that John Anthony Brooks, who's sort of assumed to be sort of on the outs in terms of the international scene, is pitching up at Mallorca as well. So I'm curious to see how a lot of these USMNT moves work out, because Pepe, I mean, there was so much expected of him at the beginning of the year, given the hot form that he built up in MLS and then making his USMNT debut. Really hasn't worked out since. And, you just wonder if he's now got enough time available to him to even rebuild his reputation before the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's going to be an interesting final few hours for the USMNT. We've already talked about Pulisic, but other players really want some minutes, really want to get going. And I imagine the Pepe move is specifically for that, not just because he's probably not doing the business in the Bundesliga, but perhaps going to a league that might suit him a little bit better. Other stories, by the way, Southampton closing in on Ainsley Maitland-Niles, set to be completed on loan, by the way. Man City buying back clauses of both Sam Edozie and Juan Larios as part of the deal with Southampton as well. All of this is from Fabrizio Romano. Make sure to check out his content over here. Tottenham, by the way, in big negotiations with Daniel James from Leeds United. That should be an intriguing one. And we're still waiting to see what will happen with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Of course, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we wish him the best as he recuperates from that tragic situation that happened in his home with his family. But that's it. By the way, as I mentioned, we have a fantastic live recap show, okay? As the transfer window shuts, Qué Golazo opens, and all the commentary will be here to discuss the biggest, latest storylines. Will Ronaldo eventually leave? Will he stay? We'll see about that. What will happen with Chelsea's final transfer situation, including, of course, Christian Pulisic. This and much, much more. Make sure to follow us. Final thoughts before we say goodbye. Jonathan Johnson, final thoughts. You go first, my man.
Oh, man, you've got me at a bad time. Obviously, Villa playing Arsenal later. I'm just praying for a positive result.
We're going to look nice in our third kid, though, at least that.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I've already tweeted that I'm going to be watching from a cupboard somewhere in the dark, just crying my eyes out, biting my fingernails off. No, honestly, fingers crossed we can turn it around. I need some positivity in my Villa life right now.
Mike Lahoud, final thoughts, buddy.
Man, I need some positivity from Aston Villa because my Manchester United plays the Arsenal this weekend. We'll be talking about it. I'll be decked in red, decked in everything but Arsenal colors. And I had a bad dream last night that my wife and I having our first child, and we're not pregnant, not announcing that on the show. I probably would if we were, but that my first child ended up picking Arsenal colors, and that was a sign that we were going to lose. So please, that dream, hopefully not becoming a nightmare. Villa, I need you to get points. And then on the flip side, United, this could be the week where we get back into form. Ronaldo getting out of Manchester United, that chapter being done. Please, 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 Napoli, Spalletti, just take him. I'll just stop right there, but you guys know what I mean. Cannot wait for this week. Come on, United.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, everybody, for being part of the family. Mike LaHood at John_LeGossip. As I said to you, don't forget, we got the weekend preview. We got the live recap show. So much more to come from Qué Golazo. Thank you so much. Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter, youtube.com/Qué Golazo. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Till then, bye-bye.